Okay, real quick, we have a question about these things. Yes. No, that's it. Yeah. Sorry, I forgot. I didn't have time. I had a meeting on Wednesday. Right, are you ready? First, if you have could and you together, how do you say the sound? How do you say the two words? Usually, you would say could you. Right? Could you, would you, did you. Anytime you have a D plus U is big. So could you, would you, did you, had you, right? Anything with a D. You can also break them apart though. It's not wrong to say could you, would you, did you. It's okay to separate them. But be ready to understand if you hear ju, then that's what it is. It's a D plus U. There's not one correct and incorrect. But usually, often you will hear could you or did you, right? Hear the beat. And these two with something like speak Chinese becomes very complicated. If I want to ask you, 会不会讲中文? How do you say it? Usually, if you want to say 你会不会讲中文, you would say, can you speak Chinese? But what if you want to be polite? If you want to say, if you want to ask, 你会不会讲中文? 要礼貌的话，你要讲 Can you speak Chinese? 一定要用 can. Because can means, do you have the ability to do it? 你有没有这个能力？所以一定要用 can. 如果要礼貌或是不礼貌，那就是要看你的 intonation， 就今天在讲的这个主题啊。So if you want to be polite, can you speak Chinese? Or something like that, yeah? Okay. Can you? Anyway, you have to say can, right? Because in this situation, 是有没有那个能力? Do you have the ability? It's not a polite or impolite problem. It's a can means have the ability to do it. If you want to ask someone to speak Chinese, 你要请他讲中文. How do you say it? Could you speak Chinese? Is very polite. But you can also say, can you just speak Chinese? It's okay to say, can you speak Chinese? It's just less polite. So, 请你讲中文, you can say, can you speak Chinese? Or, could you speak Chinese? And it's a polite, impolite differentiation, right? So, 如果是请你讲中文, can 跟 could 是礼貌的分别。可是如果是你会不会讲中文，只能讲 can， 因为 could 是不一样的意思。Okay? Complicated. A little bit hard to understand, maybe. Okay? Right. So, 有没有那个能力一定要用 can？ Right? 礼不礼貌，请你做什么？请你做什么是 can 跟 could 的那个礼貌的差别。Okay. Alright. In your books. First, let's do listening to, because I know everybody did listening one before. number 2, what page is it on? 78, right? 78. Okay, 78. Listen to the second part of the radio show. Listeners were invited to call in with their ideas. What is the radio show about? When you listen to number 1, the listening one. About manners, okay? So part 1, listening 1, is a radio show called Whatever Happened to Manners. So they're talking about why people aren't polite anymore, right? Some of the reasons about that. So number 2 is not the radio host anymore. Number 2 is other people calling the radio station. So we call it a call-in show. Hey, on Taiwanese TV, there was a show before, and you always have a call-in, right? So that's what they call it. So we call it a call-in show, right? So the listeners are calling into the show. So listeners were invited to call in with their ideas on why people are rude. So let's look at the list of reasons and check the ones that you hear. So CD1, number 3. Here we go.
2B. Listening to. Our listeners respond. Why is there a lack of manners? Page 78.
Now's the time for listeners to call in and tell us what they think. We just heard about an interesting survey of manners. So the question for our listeners is, why do you think there's a lack of manners? Caller 1, you're on.
Hi. Well, I learned how to behave at home from my parents. I think that's where a lot of people learn manners. But nowadays, parents are too busy. Some moms or dads are raising children alone or have 2 jobs and just aren't home much. So there's less family time. And that's where you learn manners, from your family at home.
Huh, that makes sense. So if more parents spend more time with their kids, we'll live in a more courteous world. Well, let's see what other callers have to say. Who's next?
Well, I live in a large city, and one thing I notice is there are people living here from all over the world. When I walk down the street, I hear people speaking 3 or 4 different languages.
So it's because we don't all speak the same language? That's why people are rude?
No, not that. Manners are cultural, right?
Right, sure.
And what's polite in one culture might not be polite in another. So when many people live together, sometimes it's hard to know what's right. It gets confusing.
I can see why that could be true. Okay, let's take one more call.
Why are people rude? Technology. I think it's because of cell phones, text messaging, and the internet.
Well, you certainly have a strong opinion.
Look, everywhere you go, you see people talking on cell phones or text messaging. They're having a conversation with someone who isn't even there.
Well, yeah, but cell phones and text messaging are very convenient.
Sure, but people have forgotten how to talk with someone face to face. Also, people expect an immediate response, and they don't see a need to be courteous. They just write short messages. They forget to say things like, "How are you?" and "Thank you."
Well, I like getting a fast response. Sometimes it's nice to not have a long conversation.
Look, I have a cell phone, and I use text messages, and I think they are useful. But I think people use them too much. Technology has made us more separate. We spend less time with people and more time on the phone.
Well, we're out of time, but to wrap up, we need more family time, a better understanding of our different cultures, and more face-to-face time. Certainly some things to think about. That's all for now. Until next week.
That's no fun. They give you the answers at the end. So, which of these reasons are why people are not polite anymore? Which ones? The first one, because families don't spend enough family time together, right? What are the other ones? good. So, because living with people from many different cultures is confusing, you don't know what to do to be polite. Alright? And what's the last one? You got tricked. Is it because of technology people don't socialize as much? What is socialize? Socialize is 社会化。
Yes.
socialize just means to talk, to communicate with other people, right? So are people rude because they don't communicate as much with other people?
Yes. So
What do you do with technology to socialize? We have cell phones and text messages and Facebook and email and yeah, cell phones we got it, yeah. We also have what, chat rooms and all kinds of stuff like that, right? So do we socialize less because of technology? No, probably not. I would say we probably socialize more because of technology. Before we had all of this stuff, if I was bored, I'd sit at home and watch TV or something, right? But now, I don't watch TV. I turn on the computer and I get on Facebook and I email some of my friends and I do. So we probably socialize more because of technology. So what was the third caller's idea? If it's not people don't socialize as much, what do you think it is? Yeah, right? Because people forget how to talk to someone face to face. When you talk to somebody face to face, you remember your manners. I guess is the easiest way to say it, right? When you see somebody face to face, you say, "Oh, hi, Maggie, how are you? Oh, you look nice." And then you ask her the question that you want to ask. If you're just using email, I don't say, "Dear Maggie, I hope all is well with you and your family. I was boo," and then ask the question. I just say, "Maggie, what's the answer to number 3, Daniel?" Right? So it's not that we don't socialize as much, it's we don't talk face to face as much, okay? Because when you do a text message, the most important thing is making it as short as possible. Because it's fast and it's cheap. If you write it too long, it sends 2 messages and you have to pay for 2, right? So you have to be careful when you're listening to stuff like that. Pay attention to the details, not just technology, the word. Okay? Alright. And up here, we're going to listen to one of the callers. Okay? We'll listen to one of the callers. You write down everything that you hear. We will listen. Oops. We will listen 2 times. After we listen 2 times, everybody will stand up. After everybody stands up, you give me how many words? Can we get 3 words out of this? 2, 4, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You can get 3 words, yeah? Alright, give me 3 words. After you give me 3 words, then you can sit down. Here we go. And no books. Everybody shut your books. Somebody's going to try to cheat, I know.
Hi.
Well, we can
I
cheat.
learned how to behave at home from my parents. I think that's where a lot of people learn manners. But nowadays, parents are too busy. Some moms or dads are raising children alone or have 2 jobs and just aren't home much. So there's less family time. And that's where you learn manners, from your family at home.
Huh, that makes sense. So if more parents spend more time with their kids, we'll live in a more courteous world. Well, let's see what other callers have to say.
Okay.
Hi. Well, I learned how to behave at home from my parents. I think that's where a lot of people learn manners. But nowadays, parents are too busy. Some moms or dads are raising children alone or have two jobs and just aren't home much. So there's less family time. And that's where you learn manners from your family at home.
Huh, that makes sense. So if more parents spend more time with their kids, we'll live in a more courteous world. Well, let's see what other callers have to say.
One more time. One more time. Just a minute. All right, I'll give you one more time. It's fast.
Hi. Well, I learned how to behave at home from my parents. I think that's where a lot of people learn manners. But nowadays, parents are too busy. Some moms or dads are raising children alone or have two jobs and just aren't home much. So there's less family time. And that's where you learn manners from your family at home.
Huh, that makes sense. So if more parents spend more time with their kids, we'll live in a more courteous world. Well, let's see what other callers have to say.
All right, stand up. Stand up, stand up, stand up. First one. Alice.
那个 one，
哎
嗨，我要
Hey, one more.
3个字。
Yeah, 3 words. 3 words.
to the end my parents
My parents. All right, good thing you sit down. My parents. Next one, Celia.
From my parents.
From my parents. 2 more.
I think
I think
that's
that's. Okay, good thing you sit down. Next one, Steven.
Fourth line.
Okay.
A lot of people.
Lots of people. Good thing you sit down. Next one, many. What? I learned home too busy. Okay? No? Busy. Oh. Busy. No. No? Please, I want to write it down. I'll put it here, just so we can remember. Okay, good. Thank you. You can next one, Dora. 18.
Well, let's see.
Let's see. Okay. What? Okay. Alright, good. Thank you. You can next one. Jane. 7. And 16. We will. No. Will. That's 2. You gotta give me one more. 3, 2, 1. You owe me one more. Shh. Be quiet. Yeah. Maggie.
Okay, 19.
19.
And other caller, how to say?
Other caller, how to say. Okay, good. Thank you. Next one. J. Cool. Family and home. Okay, good. Thank you. Next one. Mandy. From your
Manner.
manner. Okay, good. Please use it down. Next one. Doris. 13.
That makes sense.
That makes sense. Okay, good. Thank you. Next one. Eva.
Second, at home.
At home. And one more.
First, that's one behave. Behave.
Behave.
Behave. Hey.
Oh, behave. Right? Behave. Okay, good. Thank you. Next one. Joyce.
Number 10. So there's less family time.
So there's less
Family
family
time.
time. Okay, good. Thank you. Next one. Leah.
6 line.
Number 6.
Mom or days.
Mom,
Moms or days.
mums, or
Day.
dads. Okay, good. Thank you. Next one. Eliza.
7, dress children.
Rest. Children.
Grade.
Or 9.
Grade.
Raise children. Number 1. How to behave. Okay. All right. Next one. Think. That's why. You. Okay. Good. Thank you. Next one. Ling. You took morning's answer. It's not very nice. Hey, morning. 9. Oh, 19. Oh, 9. Okay. March. 8. Much. Much. 8. Job. One more. 3. 2. Oh, just 2. Okay, you want me one more. Yes.
Or have to.
Or have to. Okay, good. Thank you. Jane.
5.
Number 5.
2.
2. Okay. All right, good. You get to that. Sally.
Nowadays, parents
But nowadays, parents are 2. Okay, good. Thank you. Morning. 14. More. Okay, good. You get to that. Hey, one more time. Here we go.
Hi.
Oh,
Well,
this one.
I learned how to behave at home.
Well, I learned how to behave at home.
From my parents. I think that's where a lot of people learn.
Right?
I think that's where a lot of people learn manners. My parents. I think that's where parents. I think that's where parents. I think that's where a lot of people learn manners.
All right? Number 3. Word.
Allow people learn manner.
Learn manner. Okay? Alright, good. You get to that.
Where a lot of people learn manners. But nowadays, parents are too busy.
Too busy.
Nowadays, parents are too busy. Some moms or dads
Some.
Some moms or dads are raising children alone.
Alone.
Alone. Good thing sit down. Alone. And that's everybody. Now, if we can finish by raising hands, we don't have to stand up again. So, who can give me some ideas? Think.
And raising.
And raising children alone. Okay. Next one, Mandy. Are raising, so not and raising, are raising. Good. Any more? Cassie.
Manners.
Manners. Eva.
Third. Where?
Over time.
Where?
Where? So not were. Where? Any more? 3, 2, 1. Joyce. 17.
More courteous words.
Over time.
More courteous words.
More courteous words. Okay. Okay. 3. Stephen.
14.
14.
Is more parents
More parents
spend
spend
more
more
time.
time. Okay? 2. You already gave me 1. Stand up! Stephen, Cassie, Lee, Joyce can sit down. And Andy can sit down. Hey, back to the beginning.
Hi. Well, I learned how to behave at home from my parents. I think that's where a lot of people learn manners. But nowadays, parents are too busy. Some moms or dads are raising children alone or have 2 jobs and just aren't home much.
Stephen,
Just.
home much. You gotta take it, you can sit down. Home much. Hey, Maggie.
9.
Uh,
And just.
and just. Okay, good. Alice.
4. Manners.
Oh, 4 is okay. Yeah, 4 is okay. 4 is okay. Yeah. Over there.
Alone or have 2 jobs and just aren't home much.
Out.
Orange. Good. Thank you. Good.
Jobs and just aren't home much. So there's less family time. And that's where you learn manners.
Sally.
7. The first. And.
Oh, 7.
11.
Oh.
And that.
And that's
What.
what?
You learn.
What you
Manners.
learn manners. Okay, good. You can sit down 4 times.
And just aren't home much. So there's less family time. And that's where you learn manners. And that's where you learn manners.
Where? So now one. Where you learn manners.
And that's where you learn manners. From your family at home.
From your family at home. Good. Elijah, you can sit down. Thank you.
Huh. That.
Yes, ma'am.
Huh? 你讲他的音不要到我的名。我来。
Huh.
At home.
Huh.
H-U-M.
都中式的人，中式的人。里面很多小朋友，能力越强，会造成他们听力越多问题。
哦。
因为他们会想应该怎么拼，或是应该是什么单字，然后他们会想要讲他们已经设定的那个单字，把它讲出来。可是这样子做会造成你的音不准， 啊，所以你不要想怎么拼啊，就是 what does it sound like？
Home.
Huh.
You say yeah, Oh, you can say that. Or not.
At home.
Huh.
Or not, go around. Hey, so not or not but but 它没有闭嘴巴，哎，嘴巴没有闭起来，哎，good， you can say that.
At home.
Huh.
对，它完全都是喉咙的声音。
That makes sense. So if more parents spend more time with...
对呀。
So.
So if so if good thing is that.
Parents spend more time with their kids, or so if more parents spend more time.
哎，其实有一个啊，so if 他们没有，我就没有加进去。if
Parents spend more.
哎
So if more parents spend more time with their kids.
what if
With the kid.
with
With
their
the
kids 啊，good thing is that.
More parents spend more time with their kids, we'll live in a more
Alice,
Live.
live. Good, you can do that. Thank you.
spend more time with their kids, we'll live in a spend more time with their kids, we'll live in a more courteous world. More time with their kids, we'll live in a more courteous world. More time with their kids, we'll live in a more courteous world.
World, right? World. Right? World. Good.
Live in a more courteous world. Well, let's see what other callers have to say.
Let's see what.
Let's see what other callers have to say. Let's see what other callers have to say. Let's see what other callers have.
have to say.
Oh, have to say. Very good. Figures it out.
Well, let's see what other callers have.
Colors have. Good. Colors have.
Well, let's see what other callers have to say.
Oh. Okay. Alright, let's read through first and then we'll talk about issues. First one, ready? Hi. Well, I learned how to behave. And we'll do this more next time. Ready? Well, I learned how to behave. How? Ready? How to behave. How to behave. At home. At home. From my parents. From my parents. Listen, I think that's where. And what is this? And you always say where. What does he say?
Where?
He says something between were and where. He's in the middle. Okay? He doesn't say where with the very clear pronunciation, but he also doesn't say were. So I think that's where. Okay? It's got a little bit in the middle. So I think that's where a lot of people. Or not, a lot of. Oops. If you go to, well, if you're on the internet or in America, you'll often see this word. Right? People spell out lada. Right? They spell it like that. 他们是这样拼出来。So a lot of people learn manners. But nowadays, Parents are too busy. Parents are too busy. Some moms or dads are raising children alone. Okay. Next one. Or have two jobs. What is this? You say or, we usually say right? Or something like, what's the KK, something like that, yeah? Or have two jobs. Right? So, are raising children alone or have two jobs? Or have two jobs. Right? 那个 or 没有讲出来，我等一下可以听他会不会讲啊。And just start. And just, how does he say this? You say aren't, right? Or you say aren't, so we have aren't, aren't, aren't. Don't listen to the T, don't look for the T. Aren't. Right? And just start home. And just start home, right? We have the N plus the T. The N is very flat and pinned up. And the T sinks down, right? It's punched. So aren't. Okay? 等一下我们听它的发音啊，因为为什么这个是不一样的颜色，比较晚写进去啊，因为它发音比较特别一点。Right? Just aren't home much. Just aren't home much. Right? So there's less family time. Right? And that's where you learn manners. And here we have where again. Okay? Same as up here, he doesn't say where, but he also doesn't say why or what or where or something like that. Right? That's where you learn manners. That's where you learn manners. Right? That's where you learn manners. From your family at home. Oh, and here, because there's a comma, from your family at home. So you don't nail it. From your family at home. Next one. Huh. That makes sense. So if so if more parents, right? So if more parents spend more time. So if more parents spend more time with their kids, like two THs together, with their kids, with is voiceless, right? There is voice, but they still mix together. Same as S and TH also mix together. Okay? So with their kids. Will live in a. Will live in a. Will live in a. Will live in a more courteous world. Right? And here you have to be careful. In America, there's a cartoon. 有一个卡通叫 Word World。台湾好像也有，因为我给我学生看，他们说哦有看过。你练习讲这个的话是很好的 practice. It's good practice. Word World. Word World. Right? Because here's word, here's world. Right? Word World. Next one. Well, let's see what other colors have to say. Have to say. B 不是很强的音 have to say. Alright, 所以他就 how to say, have to say. Alright, you have to listen for a little bit of a voice. How, have. Okay. So let's listen one more time and compare. Here we go.
Hi. Well, I learned how to behave at home.
I learned how to behave. 最好有这种单字的话 for the little words, don't practice 1, 1, 1. try as hard as you can to smash them together. Right? So how to behave.
I learned how to behave at
How to behave at. Right? 然后那个 at 也是 how to behave at. How to behave at.
Well, I learned how to behave at home
How to behave at home. 然后没有 how to behave at home.
from my parents. I think that's where
I think that's where so it's got were and up. Right?
parents. I think that's where a lot of people
I think that's where a lot of people.
learn manners. But nowadays,
No. But nowadays,
learn manners. But nowadays, parents are too busy.
parents are too busy.
Some moms or dads or
Some moms, or like,
some moms or dad.
right?
Some moms or dad.
Some moms or dads. So he slows down, but he still keeps the He doesn't say or. Like whatever.
Some moms or dads
Some moms or dads
are raising children alone
are raising children alone,
or have 2 jobs
or have 2 jobs.
and just aren't home much.
And here is and
Jobs and just aren't home.
right? Or
Have 2 jobs and
2 jobs. 7. Right? So the jobs, S goes to the A. Or that.
or have 2 jobs and
2 jobs. Like 2 jobs and
just aren't home.
just what?
Have 2 jobs and just aren't home.
Just our home. Just our home. Right?
Have 2 jobs and just aren't home much.
Just our home much. Just our home much. So here we have the T and the A, right? Just our home much.
So there's less family time, and that's where you learn manners.
And that's where you learn manners.
And that's where you learn manners
Right? That's where you learn manners.
from your family at home.
Huh. That makes sense.
So it makes sense. That makes sense.
So if more parents spend more time,
So if more parents spend more time. It's impossible to separate these 2 words if you just listen to how he says it, okay? 这个完全没有分别 ，parents 跟 spend 是一模一样的，就是它的音是连续的那个。
parents spend
Parents spend. There's no break between the 2. If there is a break, the break would be here.
more parents spend
More parents spend, so the S
more time with their kids.
with their kids.
Will live in a more
We'll live in a more.
or courteous world. Well, let's see what other callers have to say.
What other colors have to say? Okay. Any questions? Let's see what other colors
Callers have to say.
have to say. Have to say.
Let's see what other callers have to say.
它不是完全可，它有一点污，可是不是像很清楚的那个 to say, to say, to say,
Well, let's see what other callers have to say.
have to say, have to say. Okay. Yes.
Why is the whole say that the other chorus have to say, but we think that how to say is more visible?
Let's see.
For courteous world. Well, let's see what other callers have to say.
You mean not the sound? You know he says have to say, but you think he should say how to say.
Yeah.
Okay.
Have to say means that he must say that. But how to say maybe means the other meanings.
Oh, okay. he has, not has to. If you say, I'll use this space up here. Have, Chinese is 有. Have to, Chinese is 必须要. So here is what he has to say. 他有什么要讲，不是他必须要讲什么。Okay. There's also how. Okay. Pig 怎么拼 ？Pig 怎么拼？How do you spell pig? Right? How do you spell pig? But 90% of Taiwanese people say how to, right? We say how to only by itself. For example, this is a how-to book. It teaches you how to speak English. Or on the computer, this is a how-to program. Or this is a how-to web page. 这是一个 how-to 网站. It teaches you how to use PowerPoint. Okay? Yeah, how to. So how to 有两个用法。第一个 it is a how to something. 然后那个 how to 就变成，它虽然是两个字，它是一块。因为它是一个教学的东西，它是教你怎么做什么事情。Right? So this is a how-to manual for how to drive your car. Yeah, how to fix your car, something like that. If we do a question, it has to be how do. How do you do something? How do you do something? Right? So it teaches you how to do something. 这样子啊。Yes, yes. This is a how-to book. It's an adjective for the book, right? Okay. If you're asking the question, it's how do birds fly? How do you go home? How do whatever? So it's always how do. If it's inside a sentence, please tell me how to go home. Please tell me how to fix my car. Then it's going to be how to. So in my classroom, when I have my own classroom, on the top of the blackboard, I always say, how do you spell blank? I always put it on the board so the kids see it every day. And if they ask, teacher, how to spell pig? How do you spell pig? Okay? To explain it, it's very difficult, but once you get used to it, it's okay. Okay? Other questions? Yes. How to behave? 19. Have to. Because this is a W, and this is a V. How is a vowel. 它没有音的。But have 是有音。So have to. Have to. 其实这里也可以是 have to say. Have to say is okay too. Have to say. 看你习 对。出发点是这个不要强调。这里如果你讲特也没关系，how to behave 也可以，这个 have the say 也可以。可是比较少听到的是这个的这个音。OK， yes。
老师，那我就是要问，我要怎么去火车站？How do I go to the first station?
公车站怎么走？两个都可以用。The question, the problem is not 怎么走。The problem is, are you asking a question, or are you? Okay, this could be a question too, right? Is it at the beginning of your sentence, or is it in the middle of your sentence? So, for example, please tell me how to go to the train station, or how to get to the train station. How do I get to the train station? Or how do I go to the train? How do I go to the train? It's a little bit weird, but yeah, the important thing is it the beginning of your question or is it in the middle? Okay. Please tell me how to write your name. How do you write your name? Please tell me how to spell pig. How do you spell pig?